Welcome to the Southeast Idaho Weather Hazard Briefing for Tuesday, September 17th. Before we get into the upcoming weather conditions, let's take a quick look at the peak winds that occurred with the passage of the front on Monday evening. The Driggs region saw the highest wind gusts for our communities. There were a few wind gusts that were a little bit higher than that occurred out in the middle of the Arco Desert. But otherwise, Driggs saw the highest wind speed at 52 miles per hour, Idaho Falls at 47. Pocatello and the Pocatello region, winds also gusting in the mid to upper 40s. We'll take a look at the satellite imagery and take a look at the storm system still lingering over the region and the one responsible for this cold front. You can see the general low is centered roughly over southwest Idaho, and that low is expected to gradually shift toward the Yellowstone area through today and into tonight. You can see the moisture associated with the low is wrapping north through the region right now, and as that low continues to shift to the northeast, we'll see that moisture continue to wrap around and continue to affect portions of the Central Mountains and then the northeast region, including the Island Park area, through later today. That low brought some fairly cool temperatures, and here's the highs that we can expect for the region today. Obviously, much colder than we saw on Sunday and even on Monday. Temperatures generally in the 60s for most of the lower elevation areas. We'll take a look at the front and weather depiction for the region for today. You can see that front has shifted past, and you can see we are expecting rain early today, generally in the eastern highlands. We're starting to see some dry air wrapping around that low, punching into the Snake Plain, and you can see this purple area, and yes, that is expected mixed precipitation, rain and snow, wrapping through the Island Park area back into the Central Mountains around that center of that low as it shifts through the region today. Most of that snowfall is expected to occur this morning, and you can see it is actually very hard to see because these amounts are quite light. There may be a dusting as low elevation as Galena Summit. Otherwise, all of this is expected to fall generally above most of the roadways in the Central Mountains. And all of these amounts are generally about an inch or so, just enough to remind us that the seasons are starting to change and winter will be on its way soon. The last impact that we have to discuss with the remainder of this low pressure today is the winds. As that dry air works into the Snake River Plain today, we'll see a resurgence of some gusty winds through the Snake Plain. They are expected to be less windy than we saw with the passage of the front, just strong enough to impact American Falls Reservoir with some chop, especially for small boats on the north end of the lake. So roughly in that 20 to 25 mile per hour range, with gusts up to about 30 miles per hour. Now let's take another broader look at the satellite imagery from this morning. And you can see that there is another low sitting just off the Pacific Northwest coast. And that's going to become the player across the region headed into the latter part of the week. As we look at the Wednesday depiction here, we can see that some of that precipitation associated with that system is starting to work into the western portions of the East Idaho area. And that includes the Central Mountains and down through portions of the Magic Valley. And that precipitation will gradually work its way east Wednesday night into Thursday. And again, we are still expecting, with the much cooler temperatures that we're seeing now this week, some snow at the higher elevations. And again, at this point in time, these precipitation amounts are quite light, and the snow will be relegated to the high elevations, generally above 8,000 feet. This low is going to be moving quite a bit slower than this first one that shifted the cold front through last night and are affecting us today. So this is expected to linger with this much the same depiction headed into Friday. That low is expected to start to shift out Friday night with some lingering effects on Saturday, generally in the eastern highlands. So we'll have a brief break on Sunday, but the models are trending toward bringing another system, much like these two, into the region for Monday and the early part of next week. There's still quite a bit of uncertainty as to how that low is going to develop over the western states, but at this point in time, it looks like that will begin to affect East Idaho for the beginning of next week. And until that time, again, referencing the temperatures with these several systems coming through, temperatures are expected to stay below normal with highs generally in the 60s or touching into the lower 70s for much of the lower elevations. This concludes the briefing for this morning. As always, if you have additional questions, please feel free to call the number on the screen. If you have comments or feedback on the delivery or content of the briefing, please feel free to drop our webmaster an email. Thank you for joining us today.